Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of MTG Arena. Today is Wednesday, December the 4th. We're starting a little bit late. Had a bit of a false start, so we're already like one game in today, but it was not really footage that I won't just repeat here, so let's just start playing and I'll just quickly cover my accountability section, which is pretty much the first I do of any of these streams. I'm getting terrible at I've still been very bad about doing pre-recorded footage. I don't think I've done any pre-recorded footage at all in at least a week and a half, just because of Black Friday and playing Hearthstone, well not Hearthstone, playing Magic Arena off screen to just get up higher. We had a card pack opening and some mastery gems that were in the previous lost footage too. I suppose it might be at a certain point a good idea to do like a full collection look and just look at what I've got. I think probably with the next expansion being announced, that could be some pre-footage before the next expansion comes out. So whatever the next expansion is, which hasn't been announced by Magic, when that's announced, that would be a good point to say, alright, now let's look at my collection and see how many cards we have and see where we're going to be as far as that improving or changing. The Throne of Eldraine cards aren't disappearing or anything quite yet, or anytime soon, but focus very possibly should shift to the next expansion, and just the next expansion, and then the next expansion. That way it always goes. One thing I still would really like to have seen Arena do is take older cards that are in like Core 19 and shift those into Core 20 versions, or at least allow the players to do that if they so choose. That way there's always this possibility, always this opportunity for you to grow a collection of actually playable cards instead of maybe having a collection that would work in Historic, but that's kind of it right now as far as Arena, since we aren't getting Pioneer anytime soon. I spent most of yesterday overseeing the installation of a CCTV, closed circuit television security system. I integrated a video and audio tap. The audio was too quiet, so I then took out the audio part for a Chinese like analog video signal video doorbell. And I think either I have an impedance mismatch on the video, which is causing ghosting, like two images on top of each other, or I have a just lack of amplification issue too. That might be it. So that could be also part of the problem, is that it is just a lack of amplification. Almost certainly is the problem with the audio. So this has been an experimental project that I'm pretty sure it worked in the shorter runs of the wires without any issue, but with the long wires to actually install it throughout the house, I think I may have run into some extra voltage drop there, or it might be just a resolution issue, and that would be ideal, although it's still not great because the DVR I have seems to only allow me to change the resolution of one camera if I also change the resolution and lower the resolution of another camera. So I've already lost here, by the way. I've noticed that as I'm playing more and more ranked games, and we're doing really good on ranked, but I have noticed that it starts to become fairly obvious when you've lost, and if you are a somewhat intelligent player or somewhat educated in Magic, you can pretty much at this point just concede and just what they use the slang of scoop, because you're scooping up your cards, although there is no animation really in this that you are scooping up your cards, so there probably should be some kind of animation, and they should probably play into that. It might be arguable that my deck maybe has one too many mana land things, so I could probably change that, and that wouldn't be too much of a balancing issue, because I do run about 2/3 of the time with 6, 7 or more lands. Well, at gold tier 4, and we just need to attack 30 creatures and get more things. Let's see, ranked draft Ravnica Allegiancy would be Ravnica Allegiance. That's not the one we want to do. We want to do the Omniscience draft, and we hope that it's coming back. Otherwise, if it gets too close to the end of the month, we'll just go back and we'll do a Throne of Eldraine draft. I can't imagine doing anything else. Alright, so just gonna get rid of one swamp, and then Bola Citadel, you kind of only need one, but having two is kind of nice. I wouldn't really go more than that. And another grotesque menage, maybe, but honestly I probably would do better with like another murder. Do I have any more of these? No. Or I could even take another blight beetle. They kind of do work out pretty well. Put another cat familiar in here. Some of these really are just cards that I just don't have any more of, and if I did have more of them, I would play more of them. So do I want to get rid of one more swamp? Sure. So that's a slight adjustment. Put a couple more things in there. So yeah, I might wait till like a year from now and try to put an amplifier on the video and see if that works, or put an audio amplifier in it and put the audio back in the circuit. Honestly, the whole project is the two separate devices designed not to work with each other are frankly better kept separate. Like, there's just problems there. Honestly, somebody should build the equipment so it could work together and would integrate features and such, but without going with a Nest camera and then several other a Nest doorbell camera, like, and going to Google, there's really no solution there, and there should be, like, and give it 10 years. Also, I went with fully wired. You know, wireless probably is easier. It would have saved a lot of effort and probably money to have wireless pan, tilt, zoom cameras installed instead, particularly high quality ones. There's just gonna be some problems if you as far as price when you start going with pan, tilt, zoom cameras. Yeah, that might be a better system, is install a Nest doorbell camera and then have a DVR security camera system that is just connecting to one wireless pan, tilt, zoom camera, or a power over Ethernet pan, tilt, zoom camera. Is like, you know, I think you should probably do power over Ethernet connector cameras, because you'll just get better quality cameras more than likely for the more you pay, but you'll pay a lot more. But then also power over Ethernet then doesn't have any battery problems, which could be an issue for something that's supposed to sit around and work around your house non-stop. And so you do have to kind of consider that with the wireless setup too. So yeah, I'm still potentially going to consider just undoing what I did and as far as the video tap, and just install one more camera. But I would like to see the project succeed too. So at this point I've won the game, and you may ask how. Well, these two will do 1 damage and heal 1, so anything I really play to get up to 10 cards to activate Bolus Citadel is fine. The only thing he possibly do is raise his health considerably, and honestly it would have to be 16. You'd have to be up to 16 or 17, because you do with even like one of these guys about 5 damage, because you're gonna have about 5 minions on the field. They synergize very nicely. And see, my health can be practically close to 0. So here's what you have to do though. This would cost 6 health to do this, and then can I activate this ability right now? No, that's a shame. Alright, well, put that on the field, and then put that on the field. And so I just did 6 damage to my health for no reason, basically. And it kind of doesn't matter though. Just do no attacks. I just need to not die in the next turn, and I think I can pretty much do that. Now he's playing the strategy that creates 4 4s instead of creating 1 1s. So all we have to do is take this and block this. Alright. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I can't play this. So we're gonna have to attack. Alright, next All attacks go. This is a sorcery, by the way, not an instant. So I'm hoping he may have figured out a way to stop me. Yeah. Yeah, I may have played poorly there. Okay. Those are my 3. And sacrificing these 3 doesn't change anything here. And sacrifice a food. And I'm fine. And we can sacrifice a food to put this back on the field. We can put this back on the field. We can put this on the field. And we can put this on the field. And we screwed up. I screwed up. Yep. Unless this guy's not going to attack, which of course he is. I've lost. The kind of only thing I can do is sacrifice this food and eat. And had I had just 2 health, I would have won. Yeah, otherwise I didn't really do anything else. And probably not going to do anything else tomorrow. And I might do a little Arduino programming setup. I'm waiting for the equipment to show up, and particularly programming an Arduino, they wanted the system plugged in at the time, so it seems like you're effectively compiling and running the code. Now I don't think my changing those cards really affected my gameplay there. That'll take a while for me to... I'll have to play like 10 or 20 games before I can get an idea of whether my tweak helped or hurt there. If anything, we still ran into a situation where there's a decent amount of land. Like there's a project that I'd like to have finished in 2 weeks, programming an Arduino, but odds are it's going to be a year and 2 weeks. Alright. Also, I'm trying to learn to mulligan more. I want to see 3 actual swamps instead of having cards that kind of act as swamps but don't act as swamps as on the first turn without some other cost or issue. I'm just gonna skip that this turn. Just gonna end. I wish I had some of these leyline cards, but that's really it's gonna come into the core 20 decks more than anything. This is instant and sorcery cards you cast cost 1 less. So he's looking to lower his expense. We'll see. We'll see how that works. Yeah, the pre-recorded video game I was playing was like a zombie driving game, and by the time I get back to it, I'll have to relearn all the controls. Yep. My only other project for the next year, as far as I'm planning, is the Raspberry Pi Zero W installation into the Game Boy RetroPie controller case, and there's really not anything that needs to be done with that too much. And in fact, I'll probably install an image and have that all set up within a day or less, and then just have it to play retro games on it. Not as many retro games as you probably could get running on a Raspberry Pi 4, but most of the very old games, like everything up to Super NES and Master System and such, I'm sure will probably run fine. And there was a different kind of clone of the Raspberry Pi that's pin compatible, the Raspberry Pi Zero, so I was going to try and order that, but it's in a slightly different storefront, and I'd basically be ordering it from a Chinese site, but it's more powerful by far, so that would be my next project on that, is just switching some things over. And that would take more work because the operating system settings are a little bit different. And then there was something else that I was going to eventually use a Raspberry Pi Zero for, is like special, like over-featured, super powerful alarm clock system, where alarm clocks, a set of them work together, communicate to each other. That there's basically a parent mode and a kid mode, and
I know who I am.
if the kid's alarm clock is going off and they're not
do.
waking up, then
Make some more room to fight in.
he just ruined himself there with that. Like, that's kind of all he could do, and he still lost. So he should just concede. I mean, you've got, yeah. The main thing about the alarm clock too is maybe I'll use instead of a Raspberry Pi Zero, maybe I'll just use the Adafruit Huzzah 32 circuit, Featherwing circuit that I'm using for the project that I'm working on, which is like a conference room sign instead, and that might reduce the cost somewhat, or just make it a little bit easier. Like, I'm not sure if either one really does. Just having it on hand, because I have been limited in the past year by not really having a Raspberry Pi Zero that I could program on, or any Arduino Featherwing type equipment. Of course, I am just going down this maker's strategy, wormhole, where I'm just getting deeper and deeper into it, and very possibly by the next 5 years I'll have one of almost everything, just extras laying around. And then, yeah, I do have a project that fell apart, and just because of the hardware design. Like, the software I never even got to. It's just building the box was I hurt my hand doing that and lost any confidence in getting any further with it. So that was a physical construction project, which I'm certainly not qualified to be doing physical construction projects. Here we go. So here's the question: is when you have something like this, is this what you want? Do you want to put everything in Magic on the field, or is he potentially going to play a Planeswalker, kill everything on the field, and I've not held anything back? Like, that would be the question. Doesn't hurt to attack with this one since this one has an afterlife feature anyways. But yeah, if I right now pulled my other Bowl of Citadel, which odds are low on that, I would be great. If I pulled a Swamp, that would be better. Yeah. So I have 6 swamps. So now if I pulled this other one, I could practically win right then and there. Actually, there's kind of no reason not to just attack with everything. Other than I'm waiting for Vindictive Vampire to be summoned. Because that would help a little bit. I could have held back this card, come to think of it. These are all flying creatures, so there's a decent argument to just attacking with everything anyways. Because it's not like I'm capable of blocking. What's this guy do? So he exiled a card. Or something. He put 2 of my cards in the graveyard and summoned one of mine. And then it goes into my hand. Or it died. So. Now it went into my hand. Alright. Maybe I'll just attack with all of the death touch ones. And he can just decide what he wants to block. And he's lost, because just next turn I attack with everything, and if he blocks, they still do enough damage. If he doesn't block, it doesn't matter. So, let's start working our way into the video game news. We are kind of, you know, at the end of the year, so there's not a lot of things happening, although Halo the Master Chief Collection certainly is out and apparently doing hugely well. But that's pretty much where I would say is the biggest bit of news. And well, I guess maybe the biggest bit of news today might be that apparently the CIA or the FBI asked Sony for information on people selling cocaine on the PlayStation Network, which almost certainly this happens for lots of people, but lots of companies, more than people would realize. THQ Nordic is tweeting 3 minutes ago about Darksiders PC having a Metascore of 80, which, yeah, advertising Darksiders 1 is an interesting twist when you have Darksiders Genesis not doing particularly well, Darksiders Genesis coming out, and then Darksiders 3 not particularly being well received, and Darksiders 2 when it came out not being particularly well received. I guess 10 minutes ago they did say Darksiders Genesis comes out tomorrow, and apparently OpenCritic has 20 reviews already. Let's see. TechCrafter has a Darksiders Genesis review, so we'll look at that. I'm just scrolling down my Twitter feed right now. I also have a review for Black Sad Under the Skin. I'm happy to announce that it seems like I've fixed my networking issues, but also we're outside of the Cyber Monday stuff, and I'm probably, generally speaking, just outside of spending any more money for the rest of the year or in any large purchases, with the exception of the Steam Christmas sale, which, who knows, like the Steam Christmas sale itself may not be much of anything, so I may only grab a few things. I did get Uno, so in theory I suppose I could be playing Uno if I got just really bored of playing Magic Arena, but I'm actually kind of enjoying Magic Arena, so I'm enjoying the opportunity to learn these new cards and see how the game has improved a little bit since Ice Age, a long time ago. It's gotten more features and more abilities. It still is in a realm of being really expensive and pandering to people. Forgot to end my turn. Pandering to people that pay to win. And I think that that's maybe slightly starting to change, but yeah, they really gotta, they've gotta put a major statement out and say we're no longer gonna be focused on milking customers, and they really need to say we don't want our customers to pay too much to play our game, and too much is certainly a relative number, but personally, if you want to have an audience in 10 or 20 years, you have to have $2.99 card packs that have about 20 cards in them, and those 20 cards need to be pretty good, and then secondary market concerns should just not be concerns at all. I think that is a major problem, is that you've got in these card packs cards that are going for potentially $800 each, when if they just kind of said, if we see anything getting resold very frequently for over $100, we're just going to start reprinting those cards. We're going to destroy the secondary market, or at least put a market cap, as it were. I mean, literally, I guess that is a market capper. On just put a market cap on the secondary market, and refuse to allow cards to get that expensive, unless they're, you know, like really old cards that aren't being used in play. That's the main thing, is that the cards that were from, say, Ice Age or Alpha or whatever, the first generation cards that are printed as first generation cards that aren't seeing any play, it doesn't matter what the value of those cards are. What matters is what's the value of cards that, in every way, I'm going to play white here in case I get my king character.
I drink only the finest,
because he needs a white mana.
Smell well aged. I feel true power.
What is this guy? I haven't seen this guy. Deals 4 damage to any target, you gain 4 life. Tap, gain control of target creatures. Interesting. And see, the next thing I summoned was this, which gives you any mana of any color, so now this being white actually doesn't help. But it shouldn't be a major hindrance. My major hindrance is I need Bolas Citadel. We've got the 6 mana we need to play it. And we've got a decent enough health. But, you know, there is also an argument that
Violence is met by violence.
the stories and rumors that I've seen online of $800 cards being in play might not really affect people playing Magic Arena, might not really affect people playing Friday Night Magic in their local card store. It might really only affect people playing tournaments. And you probably do get a lot of people that say Standard right now is a mess because it doesn't have all these highly expensive cards, and those people who are saying that Standard's a mess and not fun to play are probably the people that own those really expensive cards. So from the perspective of the new players, the kids who just play Standard, it might be that it's fine. I remember when I played a couple of games of Pokemon the trading card game, and that too felt like it was kind of a terribly balanced, terribly designed card game.
Unfortunately for you,
Honestly, I think I
too hard.
just prefer a living card game. Always just complete sets, and then an expansion comes out and you get a complete set of new cards. Even if that was, each expansion was $150
You're
each.
just fuel for the fires of freedom. The only prize I desire is your head.
Well, might as well just play this here. See, he's out of cards now, but I'm not in a particularly great position either. So resolve
It is just a small
that. Alright. What do we want to do? Just hit that. Okay, so I forgot about these stories.
if you want it.
These clearly are two very big stories, and I suppose success for equal treatment in the workforce.
Knowledge is not without price.
Now, I feel like every time I have to talk about these stories in particular, I have to kind of backtrack on how I responded to it originally, because my response in a lot of ways was a disgust in the terrible writing and the way these stories started and the way these stories were being told. And frankly, Gamasutra has a particular major hand in that, just being a bad reporter and not giving enough details. So the story we have here from Gamasutra is Quantic Dream is on the hook for 7,000 euros for allowing vulgar images to circulate. So this was the story where Quantic Dream, at some point somebody had made a bunch of joke images, and they had put like employees' heads on porn stars' bodies, and some of them were joke images that were classified, at least by Quantic Dreams, as non-offensive, and then allegedly they didn't see the offensive ones. Now, the fullness of this story is that the IT department in France, and this is a lot of this feels like it is an issue of just the IT department being full of French people, acting very French and kind of rude, for lack of a better descriptor. They refused to do their work and went on strike because of these images, and it's like, I don't know what they really wanted to have happen there. It's like, you're the IT department, delete the images. Maybe they were being told. It never really came out that they were told by anybody above them to not delete the images or not block these images or anything like that. It feels like HR could have stepped in and said, our official stance is these images are not allowed and should be deleted immediately and no longer shared. And that was that. I don't think that really was the case. I think everybody thought they were just comedy. I'm not 100% sure. I'm fairly certain, though, that nobody in the IT department actually created these images, although that would be, I guess, the irony of ironies is that they created the images and then effectively was trying to use it to go on strike, and refused to do their work. I think the IT department eventually got fired, and then like the entire IT department got fired. And they probably smelled that they were going to get fired for some other reason. And then they sued them. Now, it is worth mentioning here, this is not really the big story. It's like one French person who got fired sued, and he got $7,753 for allowing vulgar images of that employee to be circulated within the studio. So it was really just kind of like one, for lack of a better term again, butthurt employee that was complaining, whereas this hardly doesn't feel like it is even the entire IT department. I thought it was the entire IT department. I guess I'm wrong about that. Let's see. The quote here from the judge, and again, this is a French judge, so that might have colored their legal system is different. I can't even really tell you how it's different because I don't know. By remaining passive in the face of more than questionable practice, which can not be justified by the humorous spirit prevailing in society, the employer has committed a breach of security obligations vis-a-vis its employees, is the translated response. The ex-employer also sought to receive wrongful termination status for the department, a label that can be granted if an employee is found to have left a studio due to deteriorating work conditions or retaliation, but in that case no such ruling was granted. So this person quit. It seems they weren't even really fired. Yeah, 4 employees in total. Now Quantic Dream probably isn't that huge. Departed over the photoshopped images that were described as homophobic, misogynist, racist. Yeah, a bunch of SJW things that, unless I could I actually did see the images, and I really didn't think any of them were particularly offensive. It's something a frat brothers would do, and not something that should be done a professional thing, and you can't really condone their actions, and clearly they needed HR to step in and say their official word is to put a stop to this, and no having fun at the office. That's not what work is. Work isn't supposed to be fun. Here the story continues. Of those 4, only 1 employee had the wrongful termination granted in that case that was concluded last summer. Quantic Dream required in the latest ruling to pay $5,000 to an employee plus $2,000 for legal fees. So it's saying it has no plans to appeal the judgment because that's a ridiculously small amount of money for. I should have probably blocked with this. Is really just a ridiculously small amount of money for what they were seeking for a lawsuit. So, and yeah, you know, a bunch of SJWs are going to try and point this out as this is an example of why everybody is misogynist, toxic, horrible people, and all companies are evil. And like, I'll agree with you on other grounds that all companies are evil. But yeah, they handled it badly and they got out easily, and that's kind of that. The other story, on the other hand, and when we get to it, we'll cover it in detail, is Riot Games is on the hook for $1 million, I believe, or 10 million, maybe even, worth of pay that is going to be paid out to all women that have been employees of Riot Games. And I feel like Riot's infractions are much more numerous and much more offensive, whereas it is unclear in the story as to who made these joke images and who sent these joke images. It really, as far as Quantic Dreams, Riot's offenses are centered around, I think, mainly the management themselves acting completely unprofessional. Again, another story that was just terribly depicted and written, and thus it's easy for people to take the wrong perspective, particularly if they might have a bias, and certainly I have like an anti-SJW bias, as I imagine I think most people should. Like, and it's not because I'm super conservative or anything. It's, if anything, I'm actually pretty liberal, but it's a matter of SJWs acting like they're accomplishing something and causing trouble when they're really not accomplishing anything, and just ruining communities and companies for their own hurt feelings or their own warped perception on what reality is or what they think they can do to change reality. Next we have a story from Gamasutra. Get a job. Sony PlayStation is looking for a visual FX artist in Burbank or San Diego, California. One would hope that is not to hire someone that is going to make the art and the labeling for the next PlayStation 5. One would hope that kind of art has already been done. It could also be that Sony is looking for somebody to help a first-party title in development, although I can't think off the top of my head of any first-party Sony titles that are in development. Or, I mean, it could be practically anything. So next story we have from Gamasutra is the story I was talking about. Riot Games will pay $10 million in the gender discrimination settlement. What's interesting about this is that, let's ignore that Riot Games, I believe, is owned in part by NetEase and the Chinese element there. Although, let's face it, Chinese are not particularly bastions of pro-feminism. There's a news story out on Reddit right now that like nearly 1,000 women have, not women, girls have been sold as child brides to Chinese people and shipped from Pakistan to, so they were sold from Pakistan to Chinese people that then often they are forced into horrible situations, prostitution and such, and it seems to be mostly the Christian minority in Pakistan that's being targeted as poor families, selling their daughters. But yeah, that's just in world news that you should be aware of, not video game news. So $10 million, the way this breaks down is, as I've heard it, is it will go to women that worked in the studio in the past 5 years or so, based on your seniority. So the person, seniority being the day you started working. That's if you started working and you've been there 10 years. Doesn't matter if you're a good employee or a bad employee. Seniority doesn't matter. Care about that. It's just a matter of who's been working there that long. Now, seniority is a kind of great metric to use when you're not trying to argue any other metrics, and that's why unions use it a lot. It's just like, hey, your seniority, you were here longer, you're Trump. You trump everybody else that was in here less, regardless of whether the management in the company says that you're a good employee or a bad employee or anything like that. It, in most union jobs, puts you in a certain pay scale based on seniority. So you've been there long enough, you're getting paid a little bit more than the people who've been there a little bit less. No having to deal with, again, people trying to play favorites and give raises to their friends or anything along that lines. But in a settlement case, seniority, I guess, works fairly well. It's not the worst way to do something, to do it. It does mean that in the next 5 or so years, in the last 5 or so years, somebody is going to get more of that 10 million than others. Let's say that there's 1,000 women. Let's say there's 1,000 employees at Riot Games, which is probably not accurate. I would suspect that they have less than 500, but let's say there's 1,000 employees. Let's say 500 of them are women, which almost certainly that's not the case. But and this is, I think, going to current and former employees. So 500 women, you divide 10 million by 500, you're getting potentially $20,000, probably less than that. Yeah, I would, yeah, I think that's the numbers if I'm doing the math right. Yeah, $20,000, which seems maybe not even enough when you think about it. Even if it's like double that and they get $40,000 or $60,000, that may not be that much when you're talking about a situation where the female employees seem to be have gotten paid less, or at the very least treated lesser, or forced to work in a hostile work environment. I've worked in some places I would classify hostile work environments, and frankly, if you had given me an extra $50,000 or $60,000 right now, I still would, I'd be happy about some restitution there, but I would not feel like I had been made whole for the amount of frustration and stress and just mental degradation that I would have run into from working at some of those jobs. Like, honestly, I would practically give anything to not to go back in time and have just quit those jobs and left them. And I suppose that is another thing, is if you were a female that worked at Riot Games in the last 5 years or so and you only worked there for a month and then quit, there's probably going to be the one that's getting the most reward out of that, since you would have only had to put up with a small amount of frustration compared to a lot of other women who would have been sticking it out and putting up with a lot more. Yeah, let's just go ahead and attack here. Let's see. The article continues if we skip down here. The law story at the court is an issue of accused studio of creating, encouraging, and maintaining a work environment that exposes its female employees to discrimination, harassment, and retaliation on the basis of their gender and sex. I'm not even 100% sure I agree with that. The way the story was phrased, it seems like they created an unprofessional environment that, honestly, I think a lot of the men in this company should also have been paid some of this $10 million, because it feels like that they are just creating a hostile work environment for everyone. And the only part of the story that, like, this was how bad the Kotaku article was, that the woman was saying, I felt like I wasn't being listened to in a meeting, and it's like, well, speak up for yourself or not. It was really a lot of feelings and not a lot of instances. There hardly were any stories where you were called in, any female employee was called into an office and then any kind of advances were made on them, or that they were told they had to give some kind of sexual favor for a raise or bonus or something like that. It was stories of, particularly, I think one of the major management people who owns the company in part, just frat boy farting on people was the worst story I had heard. And again, this is a former employee who started this class action suit, and they did walkouts, and they did, wow, we're actually having to wait. This is the first time I've had to wait since I adjusted my network settings to find a game. And so, yeah, the Riot promised to change a lot of things, but they were between a rock and a hard place, because these lawsuits were ongoing in a lot of ways, and they didn't really want to deal with it, and they really haven't still dealt with it, because what this in part could be classified as a hostile takeover attempt of Riot as a company, is people pushing to get rid of one of the major managers. And honestly, it would be nice to see it succeed. If they got rid of that major manager, then maybe there would be some hope to get rid of Randy Pitchford. Let's go ahead and exit out of Magic Arena and relaunch it. And that took a while to shut down, because that would be the next step. And I imagine now that they've actually lost $10 million, they might be a little bit more willing to get rid of the guy instead of just putting him on sabbatical and promising to do better. That being said, like the walkout and the protests that were scheduled and run for Riot Games barely had anybody, and yet Kotaku was calling it a great success. It had like 10 people, and that's where you certainly can from one perspective look at both of these stories, both of Quantic Dreams and Riot. It's like 4 people all in the same department that got into groupthink and that were probably getting fired for some other reason. I mean, you can speculate quite a bit here. It's just small groups of SJWs, and that's what I've certainly experienced in job settings too, is that it is the one person out of 1,000 that is a squeaky wheel, that is causing trouble, that is just not a good corporate fit because they're just not a good human being fit in general. They don't get along with people. I imagine people would almost certainly argue that I was the squeaky wheel complainer and not the good fit. And in some cases, that may very well have been the case because I was dealing with a lot of people that I would have considered incompetent and not worthy of being in the fields that they were working. But yeah, it's always a bunch of people looking to cause trouble, looking to have problems, and it's not really a reflective situation. Usually it's one person got fired for some other reason and then they create a lawsuit. The problem, the difference between Quantic Dream's lawsuit, which I think was just an invalid French lawsuit that would not have made it, would not have succeeded in any way in the United States, and Riot really did have a problem, and Quantic Dream did too, and these are just really great examples of the one thing you need your PR and HR departments to do is actually handle and stop these kind of issues, and protect the company. Many people will make the argument that a lot of companies are just full of HRs that are full. Their HR departments are full of people that are just meeting the quota of female or minority employees, and they really don't have to do much work at all, or any, in a lot of cases. But the one thing you would have needed them to do is protect the company, and sometimes that doesn't really work. Yeah, if in Riot Games' case the HR really had no authority to sanction or fire the upper management person who's causing most of the problems, well then yeah, that's a problem. Let's see. Let's wrap up the story though, there's not much more. Along with offering a payment to women that were employed at Riot Games from November 2014 to the date the settlement is finalized. So this was a settlement, not even a court case. The filing also notes that the studio will review its pay, promotion, and hiring practices to ensure fairness, hire a chief diversity officer, a step fulfilled earlier this year, and create employee-led groups to hold the company accountable. So it sounds like Riot will, in this settlement, at least go through the motions of pretending like they're going to clean up their act, which they kind of need to do. And I guess in the case of League of Legends and Riot, $10 million is a well worth it settlement to get out from under the story. I mean, they were negotiating pretty hard, and it was through the efforts of Kotaku and Gamasutra that this got a lot more coverage. If only the news reporters had actually reported better and told better stories. But I don't feel like there really were any better stories. At least in the Vic Mignogna anime account, the accusations there are somewhat legitimate accusations, although completely denied by Vic Mignogna, and his anti-defamation lawsuit hasn't even reached the point of actually fact-finding as far as whether the claims against him are true or not. I think many people probably will very quickly prove that claims against him aren't, if he gets that far. At the very least, it is, in Vic Mignogna's case, stories of him hugging people that years later come out and say they didn't want to be hugged at conventions. Stories of him grabbing the hair and whispering something in the ears of co-workers, which seems to, which he completely denies again. Stories of him asking people up to his hotel room to basically sleep with him, asking people directly to have a three-way. Like, he clearly is a California sleazeball that was trying to sleep around on his wife or girlfriend at the time. Undeniably, I think he pretty much admits that himself, but what he draws the line at is that he claims he didn't do anything that wasn't consensual with adults, and that he did not intentionally act in a way that would make a normal person feel uncomfortable. For instance, in the example of hugging people at conventions, that would be him standing in one place and now we're running into network problems. It would be him standing in one place, and then there being a super long line of people to meet him, get something signed, get a picture with him. People standing in that line for potentially hours, looking and seeing that he's hugging and smiling and being friendly with a bunch of other people, and then getting up into the line, to the front of the line, and not saying anything like, don't hug me, I don't feel comfortable being hugged, or anything like that. So it's not unrealistic to say if somebody felt uncomfortable being hugged at a convention, they should have seen it coming. Honestly, if you're going to an anime convention, you should probably expect that somebody might try to hug you for no reason whatsoever. This is the meme of the free hugs and such. People are there to have a friendly and jovial time amongst their fellow fans. But yeah, I'm getting off on a tangent. My main point there is at least there was some actual accusations, whereas Quantic Dream's accusations are somebody made some funny meme pictures, put employees' heads on porn stars' bodies and set them around. Not professional, should have been stopped by HR, but not really an issue that even deserves the $7,000 that the one employee got. Meanwhile, I think there probably are a lot better stories and more stories that should have been told and could have been told as far as Riot Games to have me actually believe that it is more of a hostile work environments than what were told originally and what have even been told up until this point. It's a failure in journalism. And similar things happen in the news all the time. I would argue that CNN and Fox News are so busy talking about Donald Trump all the time that there's almost certainly hundreds of stories that have just been swept under the rug and not mentioned because it's not big enough ratings for them. So, yeah. Or a lot of times news stories just get reported wrongly and it's or badly, so people just tune out when they really should be paying attention. Alright. Yeah, I think this is about as good as we're gonna get it, so let's go ahead and attack. You gonna do anything here that would hurt me? No, let's just go ahead and not attack there. Moving on with video game news, Game Switch has an article. Rocketworks CEO shares how and why the studio offers unlimited time off. I don't think you can judge someone's work output by the amount of leave they are taking. It's an interesting idea, frankly, but at a certain point that just means you're employing contractors. That's all. You're actually employing contractors instead of what often happens is people say you're a contractor, but then they're controlling your schedule, they're controlling what work you have to do and what work you can't do, which makes you actually more of an employee than a contractor legally. But yeah, if you really have a contractor and they just turn in their work by a certain deadline and you're not controlling their day-to-day actions, yeah, okay. Otherwise, if you were trying someone for, if you were trying to keep someone as a full-time employee but then giving them unlimited time off, it's a nice idea, certainly, but at a certain point from a business perspective, what you're just saying is you don't really need these employees, because employees typically are things you need because there's always a demand for more work. It's that. So we have a 1 here and a 2 here, and we have a 3 here, so I can bring back all of these after this if I play this in this. Alright, Game of Sutra doesn't want to load anymore. At least that page doesn't want to load. It was just a brief second. Brief downtime. I need to update my Wi-Fi, my router software is what this is all going to boil down to. It's time to update. It's time to get away from encrypting DNS over TLS and move to encrypting DNS over HTTPS. Hit this, and it's pretty much all that needs to go. So let's just go ahead and attack with this too. well, guess I'm gonna have to play this first. And then just bring back 2. Now I've got everything. You put this on that. Okay. Bring back. Now. So who do we want? Death, lifelink? Yep. Put those 3 on the floor. And just go ahead and do no attacks. Let's see, Game Researcher has an article here that says sponsored beyond game design, 5 absolutely vital jobs in game development. Playtest recruiter, not really. Technical artist, okay. Platform engineer, okay. Narrative designer, definitely. Production operations, okay. But those are going to be few and far between jobs. Certainly, any kind of management job is going to be particularly bad. He keeps trying so hard to destroy my cards, my artifacts, as if those matter. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Winning Post 9 2020 announced for PS4, Switch, and PC. This is a horse racing game, so there's a decent chance it won't come out of Japan. Horse racing, somewhat popular in Japan. I think probably a little bit more popular than in America, where it's somewhat popular in America too, but it's not huge. And you're getting your anime characters also playing a role here. I would much prefer people enjoy horse racing via video game format than in a
I will gladly
real world
point out your
format.
inadequacies.
Same way that Pokemon is basically just animal fighting. Let's see, if I play this, that won't work, so let's go ahead and do this. And attack here. And attack here. And attack here. And go. See if I can just get a bit more mana, I could play this, and that alone might win the game for me. Otherwise, I can just
that got my blood pumping.
Bring things back to life. Gamatsu has an article here. The PlayStation Awards 2019 winners are announced. So who won? People that got platinum prizes were God of War, Kingdom Hearts 3, Spider-Man, Nier Automata, Red Dead Redemption 2. Did Nier Automata come out this year? Wow. I could have sworn that was last year. God of War deserves it. Kingdom Hearts 3, I guess, deserves it. I mean, you're finishing the kind of beloved storyline, so I see why you would not like treat it too harshly as far as awards. Awards are just advertisements, let's face it. So Spider-Man, I think, deserves it, although I would also argue that Spider-Man has been kind of forgotten in the past short time. Gold prizes go to Ace Combat 7, Call of Duty Black Ops. They're basically giving an award to everything. I think is how this is really Call of Duty Black Ops, Devil May Cry 5, FIFA 19, FIFA 20 in the same year. Monster Hunter World Iceborne, Pro Evolution Soccer, Resident Evil 2, Secure Shadows Die Twice. Some of these deserve it way more than others. Ace Combat, for instance, you could make an argument deserves it, but only because it's like the most improved game in the Ace Combat series in the series and the type of game that most people won't play. Whereas FIFA 19 and 20 almost certainly don't deserve any awards. Devil May Cry probably deserves it. Black Ops probably doesn't. Monster Hunter World, Iceborne probably does. Soccer, Pro Evolution Soccer probably doesn't. Resident Evil 2 definitely does. Just generally, RE2 is probably the only one on that list that really deserves it at all. So it would have been better if it was the only winner in these awards, but it seems like that's not how this really works. Alright, so all I have to do now is do the gamble and not run into any land. I could have up to 10 characters on the field. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's almost the maximum. And that means this is going to do 9 damage. So we can just go ahead and activate this now. And what's funny is if somehow they could counteract this, I have another Bolus Citadel, and enough health where I could potentially do this a second time. But it doesn't matter. This is going to do 9, and then this is going to do 10 damage. Even if the Bolus Citadel itself could be countered, these effects almost certainly can't. So it just breaks. This strategy, when it works, just breaks right through any defenses, and gives you this advantage for having minions on the field when Magic Arena and Magic the Gathering in general just kind of doesn't give you a lot of advantage for having a bunch of creatures on the field. You get into a lot of deadlocks. So I'm really liking this deck. Unfortunately, I am also overplaying this deck, and I desperately should move away from playing Out for Blood and try the Azure Skies and Angelic Army, probably Azure Skies, and do some more deck rebuilds and start to think about doing some combination decks too. I'm still probably not in the position where building a combination deck makes the most sense, but it is the next step. Anyways, we've been going about an hour and a half, so that's going to be it for this recording. Stay tuned if you're watching live. Oh, we didn't cover all the PlayStation Awards. Let's cover them, not end it on a cliffhanger. Network Awards, they gave FIFA, Fortnite, and Monster Hunter. I guess they had to give Fortnite something. 25th Anniversary Users' Choice Awards, they give it to Dragon Quest 11, God of War, Last of Us Remastered, Spider-Man, Monsters, Nier Automata, and Persona 5. Now let's go back here and look at the games that are Japanese that are getting awards up until this point. It's Monster Hunter World, Ace Combat, and that's kind of it as something that you would call uniquely Japanese. Like, obviously you have Kingdom Hearts being a Square Enix Games being a Japanese company, and Resident Evil 2 being Capcom being a Japanese company, but those are very Western targeted games. When you get to Eastern targeted games, you're not getting a lot of ones that are awards, and this is specifically voted by Japanese and Asian users, so you start to see more of them in this category. The Anniversary Special Award for Battle Arena, Toshinden, Dynasty Warriors, Final Fantasy, Metal Gear Solid, Monster Hunter Freedom Unit, Resident Evil 1, Ridge Racer, and Yakuza. Some of these games particularly old. And again, then VR awards, Ace Combat 7, Astrobot, and Beat Saber. And Beat Saber is probably the only one that even deserves that award. Indian Development Awards, you have Hardcore Mech, Hollow Knight, Human Fall Flat, Overcooked 2, and Unravel 2, which not a lot of indie games. This is also excluding last year's winning titles. So, yeah, I don't really feel like the PlayStation had a lot of indie games released, at least ones that they wanted to reward in any way. So instead you're given a case of them promoting and advertising a lot more things, that a lot more games that don't feel like they really deserve it. Well, with the wrap up of that story, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, where you can support me that way, or you can friend me on Steam and give me a game off my wishlist. Suppose if you got me the Halo Master Chief Collection right now, I could potentially start playing Halo and spend the rest of 2020 going through all the Halo games. It might be a little bit more interesting than slowly trying to go through all the Fear games, which I'm only going to do every 6 months or so. Anyways, yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.